Hello, good morning, good afternoon. Welcome to BIMStorm at a Distance. In partnership with the Asset Leadership Network and the National Institute of Building Sciences. Our world has changed and we are in a position now to have to react to what's happening right now, but also to plan for the future. Where are things going to go and how can we make a difference? Every day these numbers are going up and it's not going to end soon, and it's going to change the way we do business. So how do we, as an industry, how can we become more efficient at working remotely and at a distance? Imagine if we had to place our Amazon orders through the old telephone switchboard network. And imagine how we used to work, literally hovered over our boards and documents, capturing information. Now with these new technologies, it's the best time to think in terms of how do we collaborate at a distance using these collaborative technologies applied to the building industry. Even with the advanced tools that are out there today, there's still a lot of process silos and islands of how we work with different projects and different applications that don't share information efficiently in different parts of the life cycle. It's literally like putting a message in a bottle and hoping that it gets across to the next part of the workflow. And if we want to solve the problems of tying across the life cycle and getting many different stakeholders involved, there needs to be common standards and a way to get to the data in a platform that you can get to the information regardless of what tool or capability you have. And this is what BIMStorm is really all about. We are looking at cutting across the entire life cycle and looking at ways to even support the current pandemic and crisis, whatever it might be. We don't know where it's going to end up, but that's one objective. The other objective is to learn how we can work in the future as this world around us has changed, because there's a lot of opportunities now, a lot of smart people that are out there and want to connect and want to solve problems. So that is what we are exploring. A lot of what we're seeing has been repeated over and over again with projects, for example, the National Institute of Building Sciences, that owners need this kind of collaborative approach. And this is a very timely, I mean, there's a bad part to what's happening right now, but it also is an opportunity in the middle of this crisis. How do we become better at what we do? So that's what this BIMStorm is really all about. It's how can we collaborate? How can we solve the problems that are out there today? And how can we learn and prepare for the future? Basically shifting the industry. It's a major shift that's happening. And it's a risk if we don't approach it in a much more proactive way. So the participants in this BIMStorm and the standards that we're using, here are some of the participants. We have the Asset Leadership Network and National Institute of Building Sciences. We have owner organizations that have been participating. Actually, we had a workshop yesterday that was a pre-BIMStorm kickoff workshop that we will report a little bit on, that Texas A&M and the University Health System were involved with. And we have industry partners. And we are using industry standards such as W3C, ISO standards, Building Smart, and Open Geospatial Consortium, and other standards. It's all about moving data across different applications. And here with us today is Roger Grant. Roger, would you like to say a few words?
Hi, Kimon. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Hi, everyone. I'm Kimon. Yes, the National Institute of Building Sciences is happy to be a participant in and supporter of this event. As Kimon mentioned, we have on a number of different projects over recent years that have been aimed at helping many of the federal government agencies with their programs to implement building information modeling and management, and to organize their information to take advantage of the data they can get from BIM and to connect it with their internal systems and processes. And that has involved treating data as an asset, separating data from applications, and doing things that allow for data to be used much more seamlessly and quickly to solve problems. and the principles of what we're doing for those government agencies are the things that we're sorry.
We got a little echo. Maybe you have maybe your computer came on. Are you there, Roger?
Yeah, I think I fixed it.
Okay, good.
No.
Yeah, we can come back to you, I guess, after you have it.
Oh, here we go. Okay, now I think I fixed it.
There you go.
I'm
okay,
sorry about that. My
No
power has been out up here in New England, and it just came on unexpectedly. So anyway, what I was saying about technology, which just failed me, is that we've been working with the agencies and looking at data and how to treat it as an asset. And we're going to be using a lot of the principles that we have been advancing here in this program today to solve a different kind of problem. So Kimon will talk a lot more about that, I'm sure. Also, NIBS has put up on our Whole Building Design Guide page. The Whole Building Design Guide is a service that many people use to get information about the building industry, a resource page for finding information related to buildings and COVID-19 challenges that we're facing today. And so we look forward to participating in this event today. And thank you all for joining.
Yeah, thanks, Roger. And we have all been very involved with the development of standards over the years for BIM and other parts of the facility industry. And it's really timely right now to think in terms of how can those standards actually be applied for situations like this current pandemic, or even it's a good chance to think in terms of how can we learn more about that approach for other as the industry changes and shifts.
And okay, Kimon, just to quickly say, I was talking to someone from AECOM today, and they're looking for standards for temporary structures, which is something you don't think that much about, but they're trying to find a way to make these things reproducible. Standards are what allow that to happen.
Exactly, yeah. That's great. All right, so let's move on to Mike. Mike, introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Mike Bordenaro with the Asset Leadership Network, and the Asset Leadership Network promotes the use of the ISO 55000 asset management standard, which dovetails perfectly with the NIBS standards and the World Wide Web standards. We've been working with Onuma and NIBS over many years to show how web-based processes can increase accuracy and improve productivity. And unfortunately, now the situation is requiring us all to work in this manner. And we're happy to support this webinar to encourage people to have confidence to use these proven processes.
Great, thanks, Mike. And I'm Kimon Onuma, architect, creator of the BIMStorm from over a decade now, and working with BIM for close to 25 years, actually. And what I see as an architect, I see a lot of opportunity here. This crisis, as the Wall Street Journal said, has jump-started America's innovation engine. But what took so long? So the technology has been around. It's just that pushing us into a crisis has forced us to rethink everything. So it's a great chance to rethink everything and actually apply it. And this is the first webinar in a series on BIMStorm. We're going to have workshops. We're looking for other participants in future workshops. So please think about how you can be part of this. And Peter Diamandis said the human race has never before faced a singular enemy. This is a worldwide thing that's happening, very unique point in time. We're never going to forget 2020. So it's really an important time in history, I think. And even Google and Apple are starting to collaborate for launching COVID tracing tools. I mean, that's amazing too. I mean, there are a lot of really interesting things that are coming up. So how do we think in those terms for the building industry? BIMStorm has been around for over 12 years now, I think. It's since 2006 actually, so it's 14 years going on 14. And we've used it on actual projects. We've also used it on a response to the Haiti earthquake, where we had collaborators from around the world planning response to that. There was a response to the Japanese tsunami and earthquake, and we even had logistics support of how to get shelters shipped to Japan. And we've also been involved in 2006, one of the very early BIMStorms with the Open Geospatial Consortium, where it was a dirty bomb scenario in New York by the New York Port Authority. So it was about, let's set up a field hospital. The dirty bomb is contaminating the air. We need to fly people to this hospital. We need to track where they are. And we need to have a lot of different applications talking to each other in real time. And this was the first time actually that we were involved in connected building information models and GIS through web services, basically to be able to post things in real time to be able to react to these situations. Very, very familiar to what's going on right now. With NIBS, as Roger mentioned, the owners that we have been working with, and there's quite a few different agencies and owners that have the exact same issues. We're seeing a common pattern developing over the years that they have information about what they want to build, and there's data and information, usually in the wrong format. You can pass it around as PDFs, but if it's data and you make the data accessible, and that's what we did with the Department of Veterans Affairs and Military Health System, got their healthcare information and rules and put them in a web-enabled format and thought of it in terms of how can you use this throughout the life cycle for rapidly planning, programming, designing, constructing, and tracking the data during design and construction, and then into operations and asset management. Because from an asset management perspective, if you don't know what you own, you can't make decisions on what else needs to be built. So having an inventory and understanding of what's out there is so critical. And we see that now with this COVID-19, just planning the logistics of where do we place temporary field hospitals, what is available, where is it coming, how's it changing, everything is moving, and we have to collaborate in real time. So the structure of this is already in place, and we're seeing examples even in the COVID response from architects and engineers around the world, like this one's from Manila, for a temporary field hospital, temporary quarantine facilities, all posted on the web as open source. And this is from Italy. They're using shipping containers and creating an open source design that can be built and deployed rapidly. And the Corps of Engineers is in the middle of building field hospitals at the convention centers and arenas, and renovating hotels into patient recovery rooms. We looked at their plans that they posted on the web and tried to insert them into the BIMStorm to understand the logic behind it. So the access to information, like Roger mentioned with AECOM, getting access to what do you need in a field hospital, it'd be great if we have it at our fingertips, but we're all scrambling right now to gather it all up. But if it's in a digital format for future use, then we would spend a lot less time looking and asking and just getting down and actually using it on a response, whether it's an emergency response like this or for an actual project. So the workshop that we had yesterday, it was 90 minutes. It was planned at the last minute because we were planning on having the kickoff webinar today and then starting to have workshops, but we decided because of the requests we were getting, let's start with one workshop yesterday. 90 minutes, and our objective was to establish what type of spaces do we need for either a temporary field hospital or a future hospital or healthcare facility. We want to design the requirements, do a quick layout, place it on a site, and look at how it goes into the life cycle. And the team that assembled yesterday was interesting because we had owner representatives from University Health System who helped give us input on what is needed. We had design and engineering and management firm, Broadus and Associates, and we had facilities and operations from Texas A&M, and we had buildings asset leadership network and National Institute of Building Sciences helping us along with the standards and capturing the results, and the digital platform. So that was the objective. How can we use what's out there right now with the technologies that have been developed and apply it to a scenario like this? We captured information of what is the programmatic requirements. This is actually an assembly of spaces that came from the Corps of Engineers that we put it into BIM. We looked at how it can be placed on a site and configured, and does it fit into an existing hotel, or do we need to build a new building? And then we also looked at placing it on the Armed Forces Retirement Home site in Washington, D.C. There's an existing hospital on that site where you see that says Building 2 that was decommissioned 3 years ago. It's a relatively new building. I think it's about 10 years old. For whatever reason, it was decommissioned. So that's an opportunity possibly to renovate and use that in the future, or there's a lot of open space there to land a field hospital. So within the 90 minutes, we weren't necessarily trying to solve all the challenges of the design, but to actually hit on all parts of the life cycle and get input from different stakeholders, regardless of what technologies they were using, and come up with a solution. So what happened, I could scrub through a little bit through this 90-minute. For those that sign up and participate with the BIMStorm, we could give you access to these files as well, but this is a 90-minute recording of everybody looking at building up a program from a web interface, getting typical space types, and then building them up on a site and landing them on the Armed Forces Retirement Home site and then laying out. So we had input from the participants, for example, that said a typical hospital module is modules of 12 rooms. That was one input that we had. The types of spaces that you see on screen were gathered from input from the people on the 90-minute call. And then driven by the need to rapidly respond to emergencies like the current pandemic, and then being able to output reports and then getting it all the way into facility management applications and outputting into COBE or into actually a functioning facility management application that we put online using the data that started 90 minutes ago as a programmatic requirement. So the intent was to get everybody thinking in terms of what is possible, and then to actually start solving problems and replicate them for future scenarios like this. And that's what we're hoping to do in future workshops, is to dive deeper into some of these approaches, get input from other stakeholders, from other vendors and technology solutions, and explore how this could possibly be used in the current situation, or how we can move the industry forward into this working at a distance scenario, because obviously that shifts a lot of things and it's going to be a new world out there. So back to the slides quickly. We had Jim Dieter, who was online yesterday too, the CEO of Asset Leadership Network. And Mike, do you want to jump in and explain a little bit of that?
Yes. So Jim Dieter is one of the original authors of the ISO 55000 asset management system, and he made an observation that's reflected in the idea that the visualization of the information in the strategic phase of planning helps bridge the successful outcome through tactics and operations, so that executives can have confidence in their decision making in a way that's not possible when you do the visualization. And what we're doing is mapping the processes to ISO 55001, a strategic asset management plan template that other people could look at and replicate. So that will be available also.
Great. And you observed what was happening yesterday and participated, and I think you were documenting how it aligns with ISO 55000. Is that correct?
That is correct. The key issues were mission alignment, then involving all relevant stakeholders. These are steps in the ISO 55001. And key one is you shall have an information system, and Kimon is the author, expresses very well the value of using open standards as your driving force for your information system, secure open standards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then from a mission perspective, if you look at the current pandemic, the need to make decisions while we're at a distance is a new thing, because in the design and construction world, obviously there's a lot of value to having face-to-face time on specific parts of a workflow, but there's a lot of stuff that happens in design and construction and facility management that can be done remotely. And I think with this new world, we always hear you can't beat anything but you know, face-to-face time is so valuable. Yes, it's valuable, but it's going to become even more valuable. We have to decide how we spend time together, but also how do we make decisions collectively while we are apart. And documenting that in an ISO approach, I think, is going to be critical, so we can share that the process. So Arthur yesterday, maybe Mike, you could read these because you collected this information from them, right?
Sure. I was able to talk with Arthur. Arthur is a senior fellow from the Asset Leadership Network and is familiar with the idea of merging these concepts of ISO 55000 and asset visualization to be able to drive financial decision making. And this was his first exposure to this type of rapid planning and design. And he thought it was very useful, and he will continue to be involved and provide advice along the way.
Great. And Charlie?
So Charlie is a information analyst for the Health Science Center, and he was very much enamored with the idea of sharing the data from the original planning process all the way through to establishing information in the CMMS. And we did that in 90 minutes. We actually had a report on what he would be delivered in a real world situation. And he liked that, but really he got philosophical and was saying that it's the idea of providing inspirational hope to people that there are solutions in this challenging time that was very interesting. He's involved in a makers movement where his colleagues are making millions of personal protection equipment, and we're going to see if we can bridge the Onuma approach to equipment on an Amazon shopping cart like way to the vast amount of equipment that is being made by individuals and companies like Joann Fabrics.
Mm-hmm. Great. So where do we go next? We have a few minutes left here. And as I mentioned, this is the introductory webinar to this series, but really we want to have hands-on participation. If there's an actual challenge out there, that we can collect a group of subject matter experts to respond to that, almost like what Roger, what you were mentioning about AECOM, looking for what is a typical field hospital need. It could be as simple as, I mean, one room like that, or it could be a response to a planning exercise or asset management exercise. Previous BIMStorms, we did a lot more teaching, kind of hand-holding, and here are the steps that you need to go through. A lot of that material is posted online from the last 14 years, and I know there's a lot of people that were involved with that. This one is a little bit different, I think, because we want to be hands-on. We're looking for solutions and involvement. So if you have an approach or some solution out there or a challenge, we would like to look at that. And this is going to be ongoing. It's going to be kind of organic as we move along this timeline, as we go see what happens in the next 6 months, a year. Where are we going to be a year from now? What's going to happen to this world, and what can we do? So Roger, if you're still on, do you have any closing comments you'd like to make?
Yeah, I'm still here, Kimon, and thank you. I think this is a good overview. I think it would be interesting in the next session to maybe dig into showing how we could do some planning of a hypothetical facility. And if we're still focusing on healthcare, that's probably a good place to work, using some of the resources to get healthcare equipment and modularized design. And maybe we can involve them in some way. Heard from an architect up in Minneapolis I think Minneapolis has made SGA, they've made modularized rooms to provide COVID treatment. So those are something that could be plugged together, and maybe that's something we could try to work with. And that might help us to think about where things are going to go from here, because right now we need healthcare, but like you said, this could go on for a while. What are we going to do about housing people that don't have any place to live, or dealing with the overcrowding in jails? There may be other kinds of problems we could apply this to help solve. So I think it's very exciting to offer this up to the industry and see what kind of ideas it can engender over time as we're able to work with this. And certainly, I'm all for seeing us trying to use standardized processes and procedures so that things can be reused and be made more efficient and easier to be replicated. That's clearly the appeal and the advantage of using ISO processes, the National BIM standard, the things that are published already out there that we could find that have emergency construction procedures or temporary construction. Some things like, for example, Navy, the Department of Defense has standards on those things that are published. So you could start to pull those together.
Yeah, there's a wealth of information.
Lots of exciting things, Kimon. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a wealth of information out there, and I think what's interesting with both open standards and even open source tools, they obviously, open source means that you're sharing it widely to everybody, to the world basically, but you can still use open source to create a business around that as well too. It's not open, a free for all for everybody. It's basically a common way to share resources to apply it to a specific problem, whether it's a public problem like we're doing right here in the scenario planning, whether it's a private one for individual company or organization. And the ISO approach too is really to document and make it a repeatable process that can be shared, and basically you can measure against the success of what is being applied. And Roger, I think with the projects that we're working through with NIBS, it's really exciting because we're seeing these agencies and owners that have very different types of projects, but the same pattern of need of having a foundation of good information standardized to industry standards and to owner specific standards that can then be communicated efficiently to their consultants, and the consultants can provide additional value back to these owners if we're talking the same language. Otherwise, we're back to that telephone switchboard trying to connect two lines to each other.
And I think, Kimon, it's important to think about the standards, but also we're here to try and help people solve problems they might have. And the standards can be in the background and help us to do that. But really, how can we get together in a different way of working than we maybe would, and try to help people with problems find a solution, bringing the collective knowledge and skills of the AEC community together. There's lots of people out there that know how to solve problems. That's what they do for a living. So if we can bring them together through this platform and format, I hope that we're able to accomplish that.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yep, it's really exciting. I think it's a very scary time, but it's a very exciting at the same time. It's forcing the industry to look for innovative solutions like this, and the standards eventually fade into the background and they just happen, right? Because even what we're doing today through the internet, having this meeting, is driven by over the years these standards that are developed for the web, and now we're using them, and we basically push buttons. And, it doesn't work all the time. Sometimes things drop off, but overall, this has completely shifted how we can function and communicate as an industry, and we need to apply it more to the building industry and facility and asset world. That's the opportunity that we see. So next steps, we will have watch for announcements on the BIMStorm.com site. We'll be posting updates there as you sign up and declare how you can participate on future workshops. Let us know, and we'll be sending links out to information. I think that's it. We're at 30 minutes. We wanted to keep it short. Everybody's busy. I know that. We know that. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, everybody else that was involved yesterday. And we'll be talking to you soon.
Great. Thank you, Kimon.
Logging off.
Yeah, thanks, Kimon. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. Tell your friends and come, and we'll dig in deeper next time.
Yeah.
And be safe.
Be safe at a distance.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye.
Definitely.